Good day to everyone. Today I will present to you the timeline of the Philippine literature during pre-colonial period up to post-EDSA period. And before I start my topic, let me present to you myself. By the way, I am Angelica L. Mangaba from the said English Block B. Pre-colonial period literature. Filipinos often lose sight of the fact that the first period of the Philippine literary history is the longest. Certain events from the nation's history had forced lowland Filipinos to begin counting the years of history from 1521, so the first time written records by the Westerners referred to the archipelago later to be called Las Islas Filipinas. However, the discovery of the Tabon Man in a cave in Palawan in 1962 has allowed us to stretch our prehistory as far as 50,000 years back. So the stages of that prehistory show how the early Filipinos grew in control over their environment. Through the researchers and writings about Philippine history, much can reliably inferred about the pre-colonial Philippine literature. From an analysis of collected oral lore of Filipinos whose ancestors were able to preserve their indigenous culture by living beyond the reach of Spanish colonial administrators. So the most significant pieces of oral literature that may safely be presumed to have originated in prehistoric times are the folk epics. So epic poems of great proportions and length abundant in all regions of the islands. Each tribe usually having at least one, and some tribes possessing traditionally around 5 or 6 popular ones with minor epics of unknown number. So Filipinos had a culture that linked them with the Malays in the Southeast Asia, a culture with traces of Indian, Arabic, and possibly Chinese influences. Their epic songs, short poems, tales, dances, and ritual gave them a native Asian perspective which served as a filtering device for the Western culture that the colonizers brought over from Europe. Philippine literature during Spanish colonization. The existing literature of the Philippine ethnic groups at the time of conquest and conversion into Christianity was mainly oral, consisting of epics, legends, songs, riddles, and proverbs. The conquistador, especially its ecclesiastical arm, destroyed whatever written in literature, and he confined and hence deferred the system of writing. So among the only native systems of writing that have survived are the syllabaries of the Mindoro, Mangyans, and the Tagbanwa of Palawan. Philippine literature during American colonization. Philippine literary production during the American period in the Philippines was spurred by the two significant developments in education and culture. One is the introduction of the free public instruction for all children of school age, and two, the use of English as medium of instruction in all levels of education in public schools. In 1936, when the Philippine Writers League was organized, Filipino writers in English began discussing the value of literature in society. Initiated and led by Salvador P. Lopez, whose essays on literature and society provoked debates that discussions centered on proletarian literature, engaged or committed literature versus the art for art's sake literary orientation. But this discussion curiously left out the issue of colonialism and colonial literature, and the whole place of literary writing in English under a colonial setup that was the Philippines then. Philippine literature under the Republic. The Japanese occupation leaves the Philippine economy and ruins, and it seemed that massive foreign aid could rebuild it, with the life of the Filipinos hanging in the balance because of hunger, insecurity, and terror. Many Filipinos resorted to collaborating with the Japanese for reasons such as politics, survival, and opportunity. So after the Pacific War ended, collaborators were given amnesty by President Manuel Rojas. So that amnesty was a result of the U.S. colonialism decision to hush up the issue on collaboration. So this in turn put the Filipino ruling elites' credibility at stake because ambiguities and irregularities that was not resolved. So after that, the U.S. colonialists also linked the issue of collaboration. Philippine literature during post-EDSA period. Writing under the martial law regime was characterized militancy and belligerence, even when it shows up in the legal press, especially after the assassination of Ninoy Aquino in 1983. The temper of the year 1986 demonstrates the beginning of new scene in the unfolding narrative of contemporary Philippine literature. So when President Marcos placed the Philippines under martial rule, initiating a regime that did not only suppress the writer's right to free expression, but also created conditions that made collaboration and cooperation convenient choices for artists struggling for recognition and survival. So the EDSA Revolution was a series of popular demonstrations in the Philippines, mostly in Metro Manila. There was a sustained campaign of civil resistance against regime, violence, and electoral fraud. The non-violent revolution led to the departure of Ferdinand Marcos, the end of his 20-year presidential term, and the restoration of democracy in the Philippines. So during the EDSA period in 1986, poetry and theater derived much of its heat and direction from political culture of the underground National Democratic Movement. However, when the enemy were overthrown in 1986, the literary activity showed a certain disorientation, manifesting itself in a proliferation of concern taken up by individual writers and groups. And that is where my presentation ends. I hope you learned something from my discussion.